So, alright, it's been a while since our last recording, right, before Chinese New Year. And now we're back here today in the middle of March. It's like the Iran-US war is ongoing, I think the 12th day already. And I think we just want to talk a little bit about that because it kind of involved Malaysia also.
Yeah, definitely. But I thought it's kind of interesting because there was no warning at all in a sense. I mean, as in like there is a bit of warning, but then you're like not sure when Trump was ever gonna do it. Then suddenly the next day, boom.
Yeah, remember last year when he gave like he was telling the Iranian, you have 1 week to think about your nuclear program, and then the next day he dropped the bunker busting.
Yeah, but there are so many arguments, especially you see like some people in the so-called conservative movement in the States, like you talk about the people like Tucker Carlson, and even like Candace Owens, they will be like saying things like, hey, I mean, if that nuclear, the bunker, if it's so effective in the sense that they have already destroyed like 60% of the nuclear capacity, why is it that we are going into war? So you have like a lot of people who are kind of like torn between we are pro MAGA, I mean American first, and yet why are we caught in an Israel propaganda sort of war?
Yeah, so you do have like you mentioned Tucker and Candace, of course. These two are the most well known, and you can almost argue their content is quite anti-Semitic, and so they have quite a. I mean, they're not very happy with Netanyahu and Israel, obviously, but then you have the wider MAGA side, which is also voicing concern because I think their argument is, look, Trump won not by conservative only. He had the wider coalition, which includes the Maha. Maha is like the talking about the health secretary. The Kennedy. Then you have the libertarian with Joe Rogan, all those people. So you have all these people who may or may not support foreign interventions, and they are voicing out because I think one of the issue being raised is that if this doesn't go well, midterm is coming out in November. I mean, still a few months away. If the Republican lose the House, then you can expect the Democrat will come out with impeachment. We already saw how that worked out. So there is legitimate concern, but of course, on the other hand, a lot of people are saying, look, we haven't seen the end. If Trump can end the war very quickly, then I think, and also if he, I think one of the things he mentioned in his many briefing kind of give us a glimpse of his mindset is he said, we don't want to revisit Iran every 10 years. So it's like, you can have some kind of token deal, and then, like what Obama did. Obama deal is like almost 10 years already. So that you gave the money, billions of dollars, so they continue to build. So that means publicly they say we are not building the nuclear anymore, but we continue to do. So I guess from the American MAGA perspective, there is a bit of, I don't know, fracture. Maybe that's the right word?
Yeah, I think so. But I guess perhaps it's like Charlie Kirk. I mean, he is pretty vocal. I mean, when he was alive, that he's not quite for like foreign intervention and things like that. But he has always been that balancing voice where you have people like, okay, let's just like, I mean, he's basically just saying, look, people, like, let's just kind of like listen to what Trump is saying and kind of like just observe a little bit before you kind of like jump the gun. So I thought it's kind of like balanced sort of perspective, but then you begin to also see actually the underlying tone within the conservative. It's also where there is, we're kind of like so captured by oppressor and oppressed sort of mentality, where suddenly you begin to see that, hey, there's a lot of push on the argument where Israel is the oppressor here. So why are we siding with the oppressor? So I guess it's like, even going back to our prime minister as well, I mean, you begin to see people who are pretty much like very pro-affirmative action. These will be the group of people who are very much challenged by this whole narrative, because you begin to see why. I mean, okay, we totally can support your border control policies and things like that, but why are you, like, although you say that there is no boots on the ground, still, I guess the emotions kind of like triggered.
very interesting you mentioned about the pro-affirmative action, because now you know you're trying to put in the people who are against this. So let me come from another angle, which is, you know, I call this the political correctness spirit of the Middle East, and it's very very much linked with Gaza. You know, it's like you know, it's like, okay, anything happen in Gaza we must support, and it's the same with Iran. But then the situation is more complicated because Iranian the Iran government is also attacking all the other neighbors who are also Muslim. So that's why when I look at PMS's response, yeah, you know, remember a few days ago, there was a moment of silence in Parliament, which I really feel like we shouldn't do that, because it's almost like, you remember when Hamas attacked Israel, and I think even one of the member of parliament, I think from Sarawak Masgadin, member of parliament was asking the interior minister, you know, what is government position? Are you supporting terrorist organization? And of course, I think not a very clear answer, because PMS, he will say whatever he wants to do, but officially, what is the stance of Malaysia government? Sometimes it's a bit opaque. They don't want to be so clear cut. They don't want to offend people here and there. But you just get that kind of political correct spirit, a bit like the BLM. You know, when BLM happened, it's just very hard for people to say it's wrong, it's lawless. And you know, when Trump said that, when some of the conservatives say that, people say, oh, you know, you are not for civil rights. So it's like somehow George Floyd and lawlessness becomes civil rights. So somehow Iranian terrorism becomes civil rights. So this is the kind of thing that capture a large group of our population, unfortunately. So I'm glad in a way that Iran go and shoot Bahrain, Emirates, because now it causes people to think, you know, who they really are. And they are just, I mean, let's not talk about religion or whatever. They are just simply terrorists.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess it's pretty dumb, right? I mean, if you can't even differentiate terrorists from like a legit organization, you can say all you want, like, okay, yeah, the people voted them in and things like that. But the thing is, a terrorist is still a terrorist. So I think it's like the definition, even the definition of terrorist is so marred that you're like, are they good or are they evil?
That's why it's very interesting. I saw one analysis, and this is a Middle Eastern Muslim himself, and he was just saying, look, when Ayatollah took over Iran, he not only bring in the Islamic, that's one thing, but he brought in the Marxist system also. And when you think about the whole Middle East situation, I mean, of course, in the 80s, you still have Russia, you know, like doing, then you have Saddam Hussein and things like that. But by far and large, the terrorist support came from Iran. You talk about Hezbollah, you talk about Lebanon. So it's almost like they use the Marxist system to kind of cause people to kind of sympathize with them. Very, very much like the BLM kind of strategy. And when you think about it, I think it's Jack Posobiec who wrote the book Unhuman, which he traced back, you know, the Marxist. Yeah. I mean, you have Karl Marx who came out with the communism manifesto, but then the real spirit actually started in the French Revolution. It's like you basically don't want to treat people like human, and you want to tear down the whole structure. So you see that very much in Middle East, and that's why you see a lot of nations, they are not like, I mean, you look at Emirates, you look at Kuwait and all those, they are like, you know, they don't know what to do, you know, like to support, not to support. They're kind of like between two hard places. But I believe that if Trump is able to kind of reduce the military infrastructure of Iran once and for all, then you have nobody sponsoring terrorism anymore, and this political correct spirit. And that will also, I really foresee the end of the Palestine issue. You see, the Palestine issue, if you analyze properly, it's not about the Palestine. It's all about all the other stakeholders. Everyone except the Palestine, because they've been offered so many things, so many different land and things like that. Why was it always rejected? Because like from Arafat to even to Abbas, everyone wanted to continue the war because with war, you continue to get sympathy, you continue to get support and things like that. But of course, some people will be like, oh, that's a very extreme thinking and things like that. But that's one of the things I feel Trump can see through, and why in his first term he went to kind of promote Abraham Accord. He kind of just bypassed the Palestine and a lot of the other nations, they are kind of like okay. I mean, look at the nation that supposedly support Gaza, Hamas, and even Iran, Qatar, right? Even Qatar sound kind of pissed off, right?
Yeah, I mean they are. But I thought it was kind of interesting because you mentioned that how Ayatollah, he brought in the ideology of not just Islam itself, but also Marxist. Maybe you could explain a little bit to our listeners how Marxist how Marxist playbook is actually being applied here.
So it's really the totalitarian system. I mean, of course, you had the religion, which is always good. And I remember one time I met one person who works at my company from Iran. In fact, she's a PhD student, and she's a Christian, and she eats pork, So then I was just talking to her. This is like maybe at least 10 years ago. And so I said, oh, Iran, you can do all these things. Then she just kind of laughed. She said, in Iran, if you have money, you can do anything you want. So it kind of confirmed what I already been suspecting, which is, yes, on the surface, religion is used as a tool. And this is what sister in Islam, before they changed their name, they were saying that is exactly what UMNO is. You use religion, but at the end of the day, it's all about enriching. It's all about I have control. So that's the ultimate goal of Marxists. Like the animal farm, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. So yeah, we are all equal, but Ayatollah, the Republican Guard, we are more equal than you.
But how is it like gaining sympathy though? Like as in like people, I mean these days the words like fascist or even dictator, I mean it's so widely used, a tyrant. So it's like how can people be so brainwashed, I suppose, with, I mean, you see a regime that is such, basically rule people with an iron fist, and yet people are still sort of like having, is it just because of political correctness?
Yeah,
that
I think that's the main thing. That's the main thing. And remember in the 80s, after Ronald Reagan was elected, he called Iran the evil empire. Then, of course, George Bush called the evil Axis. And, there are a few nations. So what really changed is you get I guess you get the media and the leftists, the progressive in the West somehow buy into this idea because they at the end of the day, I think, I mean, look at the Democratic Party in America. They are more. I mean, today you look at the far left, the Democrat Party. I mean, they're different from Chuck Schumer kind of Democrat Party 40 years ago. They are really the radical left, right? And it's like AOC, those kind of people, Bernie Sanders. So I think at the end of the day, they see this as an easier way to control people. And probably they took a bit of playbook because like China kind of play the playbook quite well because, I mean, they kind of learn the lesson from Mao Zedong. If you are too oppressive, people are going to fight. But if you just push them enough, but doesn't quite motivate them to kind of revolt. Yeah. So China is playing that delicate game pretty well. But in Iran, there is a revolt. And 30,000 of their young people were killed just months before. So I think somebody was saying that why you don't see people uprising now is because there is a genuine fear that you could be killed. So, and they were making the analogy about like in World War II, even like we're talking about 1 month after D-Day, George Patton, they all were like very close to Berlin already, and still no German citizen came out and say we want Nazi to go, because if you do that, you'll be killed by the SS squad. So I think it's very same thing that is happening in Iran now. So yeah, I mean, difficult to see where this will be, but I mean, strange things have always happened throughout history, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting because I also saw some commenters basically, I mean, when they saw PMX posts regarding like, okay, I stand in solidarity with the Iranian regime and things like that.
Yeah.
Then some people will say, how about those Iranians that are actually celebrating? So I guess it's like PMX has sort of became very tone deaf towards some of the agendas that he wanted to support.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you look at even, I know today we're not talking domestically, but he has a lot of domestic issue now. You know, from MSCC to Azam and the whole conflict with Rafizi and the PKI again. And even they are talking about how he's weaponizing. You know, there was a plan to go against Dime's family. It's like, how is that different from what Najib was doing, right? So unfortunately, I mean, it's like I don't know who we can blame, you know, unless you say, well, that's part of the thing with joining with UMNO and GPS, you know, these are well-known cronies already, right? So, but I don't know, it feels like whatever reformacy that he said he was going to do, it's not happening. And when you get your biggest cheerleader from political editor from The Star and New Straits Times, these are all formerly great supporter of Barisan Nasional, you know something is terribly wrong with you. And in fact, you can see that, at least in the media, that what used to be core supporter of PKR and Harapan are slowly drifting away from PMS. Do you agree? And we're talking about the civil rights people, we're talking about the Bersih, we're talking about people who care for structural reform. Then of course, you have the other side, which is, you know, the business people, more catered for, you know, whether it's profitable or things like that. But even they get a bit fed out. Remember, prior to the Sabah election, just the way government has been kind of, I mean, I use the word oppressing in terms of compliance and things like that. So this is making it very, very difficult for people to do business. Even though, yeah, you say this is a law, but still, you need to make it easy for people to do business, right? So I don't know. I mean, at least, I mean, I kind of get into this commentary because you use the word tone deaf, and he has done that with the Gaza thing. But I was just looking at his X feed. I mean, after that he didn't say much already. I think, especially after Iran kind of attacked the neighbor, then. So the last thing I saw him talking about Iran is, oh, I have spoken to the Prime Minister of Kuwait or things like that. You know, he likes to do this and then put the whole photo that he's doing a conference call. It's like, to me, it's like so cringy. But anyway, so I feel like he kind of, maybe the other Gulf states are voicing their strong displeasure, and that is causing him to kind of be muted for a while. I don't know. I'm just guessing because he hasn't. He obviously didn't congratulate the new Ayatollah. They or alive, we don't know.
Yeah, I guess it's like everything happens so quickly, you never know.
I was reading one Western media, but of course very sarcastic. They say, new Ayatollah has been appointed. He may not even be aware that he was appointed. Because apparently some reports say that he was quite badly injured and even had one of his leg amputated. So, not sure.
But who's doing the appointment?
So apparently there is a cleric council of about 100 people. So
there's still 100 people left.
So they say this is very Marxist-like, right?
Yeah.
Like CCP Politburo like that.
True.
But it's all arranged already. I mean, it's like, so, but anyway.
You just have to go down the list.
Yeah, just looking at PMX the last couple of days. Anything on Iran? The last one day ago. Anwar sampaikan simpati dan sokongan Malaysia kepada Kuwait dan Oman. Okay.
Yeah, but I also read the post where he mentioned that yesterday I held discussions with the Iranian foreign minister to convey Malaysia's sympathy and solidarity with people of Iran during this extremely difficult time. And he mentioned that, I mean, we were extending sympathy to the lives lost, like including Supreme Leader of Iran, as well as 165 students. And I mean, so all these things, I guess, earlier on, he was like basically just saying that Malaysia reaffirmed its firm stance against any military action that violates the sovereignty of a nation. So I guess it's like people kept linking it with like the like, hey, I mean, this is a sovereign nation, and how can you just attack it? I mean, he used the same terminology earlier on with the capture of Maduro as well. I mean,
Yeah.
so I guess it's almost like there is a set of terminology that he will just pull out from his pocket, and whenever these
Yeah, it's
sort
a
of
very
things happen,
globalist kind of language. And
exactly.
you're right, very, very similar to when Maduro, but of course with Maduro, at least Rubio came out and said, well, this guy is not even a president, but with Iran, they don't even bother to explain because, I mean, there are many, of course, this is the other thing that some of the conservatives are saying, we're not at war and things like that, but there are others who argue that we have been at war with them. United States have been at war with them since the 80s, since they took over the embassy and they killed hundreds of servicemen and things like that. So whether you are at war or not, it's not something for a body like United Nations to decide. I mean, and that's what Trump has been saying, right? United Nations have not. I mean, if you say you are so concerned about all these things, then what happened when Ayatollah killed 30,000 of his people? You kept silent and things like that. So I think a lot of the people who kind of want to rely on United Nations authority, they kind of don't have the moral authority to do that because you look at Africa, there's so many civil war there, nobody is commenting anything on that, right? It doesn't concern them, but of course now everyone is very concerned because of crude oil, right? So have you seen
Yeah.
the crude oil movement?
I mean, in one day it just went up and went down.
Yeah, they say 30% drop is probably a single day. Even now, it's kind of relatively low, And kind of remind me of what during the Tariq time, remember the term they used? Panikan. So,
You panic too quickly.
yeah, but then of course, now what do you think of this angle? I mean, some people mention the angle of, as in the end game for Trump is still countering China. Have you heard this angle?
Yeah, I mean, I've read this, but I guess it's like, I felt it's just maybe perhaps one of the objectives, not as in like the overall, it's like, not like the main objective, because I felt like the overarching goal for the Trump administration actually is more like to reassert US leadership in the global stage. So I felt like that's more of his mantra in the sense that peace through strength. So it's like he's trying to recapture some of the major ports and major straits. So I felt like there is more like he's actually building an infrastructure to prevent, I mean, in case of like another resurgence of like a globalist agenda that people are trying to just put in a way, because I guess it's like looking far ahead into his legacy. So I felt like it's not so much on just, yes, I think China is definitely within the radar, but it's not like the overall main goal, because I kind of like follow and read a few news concerning this, but I just felt like I felt like it's maybe too easy. I don't think Trump's mind is so easily read.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm not quite sure also what I mean. You do see some social media influencer that is more aligned with CCP, try to say this is a bad mistake by, the very predictable kind of thing. And then of course, it's like, yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you that he is looking to assert American dominance in different choke point. I mean, look at what he's trying to do with Greenland and things like that. Of course, he's using leverage. He's using the fact that Europeans have not been paying for their defense, the fact that Canadians have not been paying their defense. And so it's another very side interesting point is that, remember, two nations kind of like very muted and didn't, and they say, somebody was just kind of making fun, two quote unquote Muslim nation didn't support, because a lot of Gulf nations supported the whole action, especially when they were attacked. The two Muslim nations were United Kingdom and France. and I think a few episodes ago, we were just talking about how Emirates, some official from Emirates was saying they are not sending their people to United Kingdom because they could be radicalized there.
Yeah, I mean, even with London, it has gone so crazy as well. I mean, they are so busy with trying to be politically correct, and that you have like major knife crimes in London itself, and yet people are not. I guess like there's so many crimes over there that it's not being resolved properly, and then I guess Keir Starmer will be like looking at his exit.
Yeah, and it's very, very similar to Democrat. It's like, they are like, okay, we cannot say this, it's politically incorrect. And just like the shooting incident in Bondi, right? In Australia, then it's the same. All the leftist government is the same. We cannot say this, we cannot say that. But then what they don't see is that a more extreme leftist person will come and replace you. It's like, yeah, you have Chuck Schumer, but Chuck Schumer is being replaced by AOC. And Stammer is not hard left enough. That's why they have 2 by-election, right? The Green Party won. So it's like you give him, they'll just find a more. That's why Mamdani won. Because they just find, but until people discover that we screw up. And I imagine a lot of New Yorker already kind of regretting too late. You just have to suffer, right? Yeah, but kind of interesting in terms of the global resources, trying to exert control, and of course I think the other thing, which really you look at Biden, Obama, they haven't done very well is, I mean, look at the way Biden do the withdrawal from Afghanistan, right? Billions of equipment was stolen and things like that. So that's one of the PSS assignment. I think he has done an outstanding job so far, right? So in terms of just, of course, Trump will always say, look, my first term, I gave all the budget to Pentagon. But you can't deny that with Maduro and now with Iran, they're putting a clinical show, right, in terms of military power.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think it's very, very impressive. I mean, military-wise.
So the other, I mean, all these things, there is a theme, right? I mean, ever since Trump came, and we did quite a few episodes already, first with the tariff, which really caused everyone to go haywire. But now, remember one of the biggest argument against tariff, inflation. It's like, where is the inflation? And in fact, US is having like all-time low inflation.
Exactly.
And then of course, like you talk about when the war started, some insurance company, Britain's Lloyd's, which kind of cover 20% of all the shipping, they say they're not going to underwrite. And immediately you saw what Trump said, right? Then we will underwrite.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the most interesting thing that has occurred. I mean, I've never
That's
thought
the business
about,
side of him, right?
Yeah, I've never thought about the marine insurance and things like that. And yet, I mean, because oil prices, I mean, everything is like supply and demand. But the thing is, there's also like a substantial risk. So I've just thought, wow, I mean, he immediately thought about like, okay, that's what US government is going to do. I mean, it's very, very unconventional.
Yeah, it's like you find an issue and you try to find the gap. And so besides the initial reaction from PMS, I think overall it's kind of muted, right? Do you see a lot of people discussing, I mean, for or against the whole thing? I mean, other than maybe some people are, I mean, I look at Malaysia, Guinea, there's so many Trump deranged opinion, right? But I think they kind of gave out already.
Too many things going.
Yeah, I mean now they're more like targeting PMS, right? Because I mean I think they don't like Trump, but I think they are more pissed off with PMS because so maybe I know we talk about Iran, but we can kind of wrap up today by going back to PMS because do you feel like I mean, we use Gaza and Iran sort of like a case study on him. You use the word tone deaf. Do you think that's how he's dealing with his supposed core supporter, people like you and me?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel, I mean, he's getting better. I mean, in terms of like the tariff negotiation and things like that earlier on with the US administration. But there are also moments where it sort of revealed his emotions. So I'm not sure if it's his core counsel that is actually advising him to do that, or is he actually kind of like just playing by ear, as in look at, okay, how people will respond. If people will respond negatively, I should correct my statement and things like that. So I felt like he's like navigating through those portions. But like what you mentioned earlier on, as in the reformation part has yet to be truly demonstrated. I think that's kind of lacking, and that is actually what is going to cost him
So he's looking at
greatly.
big ticket item like, separation of AG and prosecutor. Then he's looking at, the term limit. So, I mean, of course, both have not yet come to pass. But do you think people are kind of like persuaded by this kind of thing, or is it still bread and butter at the end of the day?
Well, I guess there's a portion for both. I think in good times, people will begin to think about some of these policies, but in bad times, then bread and butter sort of.
We're still in economic challenging time, right?
Yeah, but I mean that has always been his major report card, as in he's always just saying that, hey, under my term, the ringgit Malaysia has strengthened. I mean, coinciding with the US, because dollar is like weakening and things like that. So I guess it's like just trying to like go by those few play cards and just basically saying that, hey, I mean, I've done a good job. I mean, economically wise, but the thing is, he is pretty tone deaf, I think, when it comes to the actual struggle of people, because there's been so many U-turn. I mean, locally with a lot of like e-invoicing issues and things like that, and even taxation and things like that. So I guess it's like these sort of things do demand more accountability. So I felt that part he might not have feel the pinch yet.
So do you think it's the advisor around him, or I mean, people kind of try to analyze, what's hindering him? Is it because he needed support from UMNO, GPS, and some of these supposedly reform will not be satisfactory to them? I mean, because obviously any kind of reform is a challenge to the old Barisan Nasional bloc, right? And ironically, you have two big components now in the unity government, GPS and UMNO.
I felt there is a portion, maybe his hands are a bit indeed restricted, but I felt like there's only so much that you can say. I mean, surely you can find a common ground with your coalition partners, but there is also the part where I felt maybe there is some sort of undealt trauma. Maybe it's like you have been deprived of power for so long that you are kind of power hungry when you actually get into the position of power. So I felt like there is that part that has to be pretty much like ironed out so that he can truly. I felt like there's a lot more potential in him that has yet to be unleashed. So it's like that part. I mean, yes, he has done well somewhat with the economy. I mean, he's also looking after the people's welfare. I mean, I would say he's very concerned with maybe B40 welfare and things like that. But that has always been the struggle of this nation. I mean, we have been trying to restructure the whole income group for the longest time. I mean, with so many programs like New Economic Policy, then later on change to NDP and things like that. But that part, I mean, if there is more concrete policy, I think people will actually be very, very appreciative of.
Yeah, I mean, after 40, 50 years, you seem to not able to change that. So I think something is wrong with all the initiative, right? Because it seems like the government never want to deal with the systemic struggle. Of course, at the end of the day, is you have at some point. I mean, this was discussed way, way back, even during the Reid Commission, right? That at some point the affirmative action, and in fact, they don't even use the word affirmative action. I think if affirmative action was kind of brought out during the negotiation, I can imagine Lord Reid would just kind of exploded, probably. But it wasn't that. But it is like support to balance the economic inequality, 10 years, 20 years, those kind of things. And ironically, of course, is Tunku would not probably understand the struggle. I mean, he is elite, right? So, I mean, this is just, our founding is just so messed up from the get-go. But we can't blame Reid or Tunku, right? Now, it is up to this generation what you want to do. And is there a political will to really... Because I think we mentioned very often in this show that when things get tough, the first tendency is to kind of like be more socialist, be more handout. It's like you have a very severe injury, but you just want to stop the bleeding and things, which is fine. But you're not dealing with a core issue, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've also heard like, because just before, I mean, just after CNY, I kind of like had a gathering with my former colleagues and things like that. I mean, you have people of very, very high ranking, yet they are very much sympathetic towards like China. They will say, oh, things like, oh, CCP is socialist. So I was like thinking, does that mean that you actually want that in Malaysia? So I feel like people are pretty bizarre. I mean, it's like irrespective of the generation that you are in, there is also that sort of mindset that is so captured by this whole idea of like, I need a fish, I need a fish.
Yeah, I mean the thing about CCP, and I think we can do one episode. Let's get David down here, and because I mean you know my friend Colin, right? We always talk about that because we both have a lot of dealing with China people. I think we have clients and stakeholders, and the one thing we both agree about CCP is that they are very good at putting out shiny things. So we have the best train, we have the best whatever, you know. So people are kind of, I think it's more of the middle class here in Malaysia that are more, I mean, irrespective of race, okay, I wanted to say Chinese, but actually it's not true. Is if you're middle class and you are kind of like want to have a more upward mobility in terms of your asset net worth and things like that, you would definitely be attracted to the new and shiny things, which China provides a lot because that's really their mantra. You know, it has to look good on the outside, and that's why anything that relates to them with software and things like that, I personally don't trust them. Okay, so but I know a lot of people would do. That's fine. More power to you, and I mean I'm just trying to kind of, I mean you talk about media, of course their media. I mean their social media is there, but when you talk to a lot of China people, they are extremely critical of the government. The only one that I saw like very blindly support them are Malaysian. Seriously, so I just find it funny because I know so many like China people, unless you are CCP member, they don't really have very nice thing to say. So, but I mean everyone have their own personal experience. But it's the same, right? How you know the leftists, the woke agenda, the kind of media you consume. If you consume more of one kind, and people will accuse us of the same, right? We consume a lot of MAGA and Trump content.
True.
So yeah, but we try to be a bit more balanced. I guess one of the objectives, of course, this is not a MAGA podcast or anything, but I just feel like nobody is really talking about it in Malaysia. So we just want to help people to understand a little bit. And from our own, I mean, we do have an interest. That's why we do this, right? But anyway, we kind of like go over the place already. So maybe next week or the next few weeks, let's talk a little bit about the CCP influence. And not influence, what's the right word? I mean, when you say that socialists, they admire, I mean, the first question I would say to you, do you want to stay there? Do you want to be a citizen there?
No, like I remember my aunt when she was working there in the 80s, and every year you can't, because you do need like visa to go over there and things like that. Then Malaysian government will actually be like scrutinizing, are you like Malaysian? Because Chinese usually have the tendency to be more communist inclined.
Yeah, correct.
So then my aunt just confidently tell them, don't worry, I'm a capitalist. so that settles all the visa approval and things like that. But I guess people, if you have not gone through like a certain hardship in terms of like what the upward mobility that you mentioned, I guess people will be really drawn to a lot of like perceived unfairness. Like, I mean, it's unfair. The government is treating a certain people group with more favor. But the thing is, I mean, if you work hard and things like that, I mean, because here we are all about promoting like the pursuit to happiness. So I guess people need to think that, hey, actually being a capitalist means you actually have the freedom to do a lot of things. I mean, and if you're hardworking, you could actually make it in life. I think that is what American dream is all about. So what we are actually trying to like just present a different kind of perspective here is really, hey, I mean, you look at two different models, see which one is more superior in terms of how it actually improves your life and quality of life and things like that. So, I mean, if it does improve that portion just by a little bit, I guess you can safely say that one model is more is better than the other model, is more preferred than the other model.
Yeah, I think you kind of sum up what our show is all about, right? I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it goes back to that comparison. And when we look at even Malaysia with the strong affirmative actions, there is still room to pursue happiness. I mean, unlike say Iran, where only or North Korea or Venezuela, I don't think you want to go there. And even in China, I think it's quite limited, depending on your social status and what's your connection. And a lot of time, if they have an opportunity to go overseas, they would. So, but I guess it's the same, right? I mean, you get a lot of Malaysian, you mentioned the perceived unfairness, then they migrate to Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, and so many people after 20, 30 years, they kind of, I don't know, the grass is not greener on the other side.
Yeah.
But anyway, we shall continue to have more discussion on all these things, freedom and pursue happiness. And yeah, do let us know if any other topics. I know today kind of random, right? But kind of, but like deal with the core themes of what we wanted to do. So anyway, I think our time is up. So we shall come back for another episode soon.
All right.
Okay, bye bye for now.
Bye bye.